My name is Sarah Scheffler. I'm very excited to be joining CMU as an assistant professor within the Engineering and Public Policy and Software and Societal Systems departments. I like to say that my research is in cryptographic checks and balances, and let me tell you what I mean by that. Cryptography has really come a long way since the invention of plain old encryption. Nowadays, cryptography is in nearly every aspect of digital life, ensuring that only someone who has a key can unlock your messages, unlock your phone, and the contents of your internet traffic, and lots of other things too. The central object throughout all of cryptography is a key, a piece of information that lets people who have it do some action, and people who don't have it are not able to do so. Naturally, that means we want to be pretty careful about what powers we grant to key holders. In some sense, this is just a statement that with great power comes great responsibility. And those questions of key management and verification are always important, but something really special happens when it's the very provider of a system that has to be made accountable directly to the user. Let me give a couple examples. You might be communicating online with friends on social media, and you might think that although it's totally fine for the platform to remove certain kinds of content, you might be worried that the platform might also apply that power to topics you think are really important. Or maybe it already has, even though that's not what they say they're doing. And it would be really nice to have some kind of guarantee that the platform is actually doing what it says it's doing and living up to its word. This is true in every kind of social media, but it's especially true in the end-to-end encrypted setting where the privacy expectations are higher. Or, for example, if a US court orders you to decrypt your device, that device isn't just opened up for you. Depending on the circumstances, this often becomes a question of your Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. And the fact that your word is ever needed at all is a testament to the fact that the technology is doing its job of keeping your information secure. Or finally, if you use an end-to-end encrypted platform for messaging, you may be interested to know that journalists are beginning to use data donations to look at big picture trends in encrypted messages. And the goal is big picture, aggregate understanding, not individual messages. And you might think, oh, that's cool, but the whole point of using this end-to-end encrypted platform is to preserve my privacy. And the only way I would be comfortable donating my messages is if I had some kind of verifiable guarantee that participating won't cost me the privacy of those messages. In all these cases, there's a promise being made that some entity like the platform or a device or a journalist is going to behave in a specific way. But I know I certainly feel a lot better knowing that that promise is backed by technical weight. It's no longer a promise we're taking on faith. It's a cryptographic proof that would be very hard, if not impossible, to fake. My research is about figuring out which systems really need those promises, understanding what kinds of promises are feasible, compatible with each other, and desirable in different settings, and then building the cryptographic mechanisms that will enforce it. Let me go into a little more detail on one example here, which is about bringing verifiability to something like content moderation. This is a huge topic that goes well beyond what I'll be able to discuss here. But for now, let's think about a platform that will block certain kinds of content, but not others. The first thing we would want to do is say, okay, what can go wrong? First of all, does the thing they're promising to do actually make sense? And if it does, or at least if it's above some bar, what would an implementation of that promise look like? Some problems are just not going to be addressed by the technology, but in some of them, the cryptography and other kinds of technology have a very helpful role to play. And for those, we can proceed to build cryptographic protocols that enforce the policy goals that we want. Let me go over one example of the last property here, where we want to guarantee notification to users when some action is taken on their content. So a platform, for example, might have two conflicting goals. On the one hand, it might want to be transparent to its users and clear when it's taking some action against the user, like blocking their content or investigating it. This is especially true in settings where that user's content is encrypted and still being investigated. On the other hand, the platform might find it helpful to investigate especially problematic users and use them to try to unearth other problematic users or content. One way we could address this is to still guarantee notification to the user, but after a delay. And that guaranteed notification, we want to not just be a promise with words that the platform could choose to ignore if it chose to do so. It can actually be a promise with cryptography. So in this way, the platform is tying its own hands and committing itself to its principle of transparency. So by using a two-party computation protocol, the only way for the platform to even learn the fact that this content matched its particular list is by giving the user a key that they can use, not now, but later, to find out that their content was in fact being investigated. And moreover, if you apply this system at scale, you can even incorporate a public token into this system that would let the overall blocking rate be publicly monitorable. So this builds upon existing transparency reports, but again adds this technical weight rather than just relying on these numbers being the right thing through a promise of the platform. Now we have some kind of technical confidence in those numbers. In this case, we accomplished this using two-party computation, using something called authenticated garbling. But similar kinds of applied cryptography, including novel zero knowledge proofs and other kinds of multi-party computation, enable us to enforce other kinds of policy goals as well. There are a lot of interesting and important challenges at the intersection of cryptography and policy. Something I've been investigating recently is the increased use of digital forms of identity and ID cards. I've been following this very closely because on the one hand, applying the ease of the digital world makes it a lot easier to use ID cards in some settings. But on the other hand, it makes it a lot easier to use ID cards in some settings. And there is already a lot of privacy invasive data collection, not to mention data breaches that would play very badly with ID cards in the digital world. So if these systems do catch on, I would really want them to be verifiable. I would want confidence that the information in my ID is only being used in the ways that these platforms claim that they're using them and not in some other ways. And I don't want that as a promise that I take on faith. I want to enforce that through cryptography as well. I'm very excited to be working on these topics here at CMU. If you're also excited about these things, I'm always happy to talk. Thank you. My name is Sarah Scheffler. I'm very excited to be joining CMU as an assistant restart, professor. All right, restart.